You're listening to another episode of In Post. If you like what you hear, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Anyway, sit back and enjoy the episode. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey. Letting you know right now, this episode right here, spoiler warning. You don't want to know what I'm talking about? I wouldn't tune in. I'd wait. This is your warning. Hey, I told you. We're back. We're talking again. Jay-Z, how you been?
I've been splendid, player. How about you?
I've been pretty good, honestly. But we're back at it again. What are we talking about today?
I think we're talking about the Book of Clarence.
Clearance?
Maybe Clarence.
It might be on clearance by the time the film comes out.
See, there you go.
Comes to DVD. But no, we're talking about the Book of Clarence, a film with Lakeith Stanfield in it. It's about a guy named Clarence.
Honestly, yeah. It's like it's pretty simple, but it's like, where do you really begin with telling recounting it?
Well, I guess I'll give them the synopsis of it. The Book of Clarence takes place during the time of Jesus Christ, during the BC, before Christ. And then Clarence, he's just a regular old guy down on his luck in Jerusalem. Starts off, he does a risky bet, loses. Now he owes somebody a lot of money. And lo and behold, Jesus walks through, and he's
I
like,
see what you did, lo and behold.
oh, yeah. Jesus walks through, and like, oh my God, it's Jesus Christ. Like, the one and only. He pimps in on the screen, and it's like, oh, cool. And like, his brother turns out to be Thomas, his twin brother. It's Thomas, one of the apostles. And that's pretty much it. And so Clarence, he sees that, and he's like, you know what? I need that kind of motion in my life because it'll help me from getting crucified. And so, because he also got a lot of money. So he's like, I need to become a disciple. He tries to, fails, and then he's like, you know what? Forget becoming a disciple. I want to preach my own gospel because these guys, they're phonies, big fat phonies. He doesn't believe in them. And so the film pretty much explores that for the most part. That's pretty much all you need to know about what the film's about. It's about a guy named Clarence becoming his own Messiah.
Yeah, like straight up and down. I get, and maybe I don't know. Like for me, it was a unique look at somebody discovering like what does faith look like to you, and how do people interact with faith. Like very, very good, in my opinion. Let me say, very good message. I enjoyed the movie. I could definitely see there was even the trailers that I had seen for it, I didn't quite know what this was about to be. Like, I was confused, kind of like, I don't want to throw out like misled, but
I will.
there it is.
I can say misled because I felt like I was misled. I'm gonna be honest. But yeah. Well, I guess we'll just dive into that. Like the different messaging of the film and its marketing is pretty much how I started off. Because my interest peaked of this film when I saw a trailer for it, or just scrolling through YouTube. And I was like, oh, Book of Clarence, what's that about? Lakeith Stanfield, I love him in Atlanta. Him with Donald Glover, because his character in Atlanta, he was a weird dude that just said a lot of weird philosophical, spiritual things. Weird guy that he played in Atlanta. I was like, I love the way he acts. Let me see what else he's working on. And then I see the trailer, and he's like, I'm going to become the Messiah and do my own preaching. It's like, oh, to me, this was a religious satire film about Christianity. I'm like, one, that's bold because we live in the U.S. of A. You can't talk about Christianity and make fun of it or critique it in any kind of way because people get upset about that, at least in the U.S. It's very tough, very touchy subject talking about Christianity. So I was like, okay, what is this movie talking about? And so I go in and I'm watching this. I'm like, okay, cool. We're getting into the critique. He's doing his own little thing, but that does not hold a lot of weight and doesn't last long, unfortunately, for me. What about you?
I guess for me, and I think the funny nature about this movie is it's really like it'll affect everybody differently, and it like leave everybody feeling differently. Because for me, I was kind of like I was unsure. Like honestly, going into the movie, I thought that he literally was Jesus. Like I thought that's what this was gonna be. And maybe I didn't. I don't want to say like I correctly read and assessed the trailers. Because it's subjective, I guess. But
yeah, of course.
Definitely when I saw it, I was very compelled. Like it was, and not like I had been through something like that, but it was just in a way I felt like it was a way, like one of those squint and you'll see it type things. Where I was just like, yeah, I remember one time where I I thought I could be my own God. Like I thought I could really like figure this stuff out, and then I tried to use my logic, and then my logic turned out to like not work for me. And then it was just like one day where I just like kind of just laid it all down, and I was like, all right, what is happening? And then things just kind of like, snowballed into like, what I believe, I ultimately subscribe to like divine situations, and that's just the beauty of it, because it's just like that's just my experience. That's not gonna be the next person's. So I think this movie is kind of predisposed to not. It's like I think if it does what it should do, it should have mixed reviews. Like it shouldn't be universally, or it shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't have like widespread.
Yeah. No, this movie by all means is going to be polarizing in the sense of people will either like it, or people will really hate it. I don't hate this movie. I am just disappointed in the offerings of this film, because when I saw it, I'm not the most religious person, really. So I was coming into the film thinking about like, a nice, interesting critique. Because usually satire is used to critique some idea, thought, or that exists in society today, and give it a different lens and a different perspective on it. And so I thought, touching on the topic of Christianity, not many films or much media does a critique on Christianity. Mostly it just does a religion as a whole, because most religion in its core are the same things. You believe in a God, you follow these things, these commandments that they give you, and you do all this to be a good person and hopefully find a good afterlife. That is most, if not all, religions in a nutshell. Paraphrasing, of course. And when I saw the film, I was like, okay, this is going to challenge Christianity in some way, shape, or form. I'm very interested in it because, having another Messiah is blasphemous in the sense of Christianity, because, he walked up on the thing, he's like, no false gods. He's over here saying that he's the new Messiah, is going to teach you the ways. But Clarence doesn't do that. He tries to copy what Jesus does and then co-opts this and then latches onto the idea of like knowledge. Like, yes, we're going to use knowledge, because Clarence doesn't believe these miracles that he did were actual miracles. He's like, nah, it's just magic, some charades, some illusions that, like, if I can copy this, I can use this, because like I live in the real world. What he's talking about is fantasy. And so he uses that to gather a following about knowledge. And that was very interesting. It was like, yes, knowledge against faith, because that is what this movie is about. You can kind of see it in the background of like knowledge versus faith, and it's there, but it's not there long enough to have like a concrete idea or discussion about it to like hold weight. It's very, very surface level, and it's like what's the word I'm looking for? In the way it's messaging. It's very surface level, very bare bones. You don't need to think too deep, and nor does it try to go deeper than it wants to, because it knows its audience. What do you think?
I mean, I guess for me it all goes back to like kind of like where I stood at the beginning. I was like, maybe because like I can empathize with Clarence's like character a little bit. I was like, okay, like this, like it didn't take too much, like what is going on here for me to be like, what I mean, for me to like connect, and maybe that's like where it's kind of like, oh, I get it in a way, but I know that I don't get it because it's not written from my perspective. So knowing that, it's like kind of making me have even more empathy for any like interpretation of this movie, because I'm like, it's one of those things where it's like there is no clarity in this, because clarity will only derive from one person's point of view and one person's perspective, and that's a culmination of things you've experienced, things that you've seen, things that you know to be true. And even like I don't know like what they say in like church. I think it's like I've always heard like faith is the evidence of things unseen, which in itself is kind of like almost like an oxymoron a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And that's like kind of the thing where I was like, okay. It gave me like the most mixed messaging ever. And I liked the movie. And I'm just like, oh, this is so it's leaving me feeling very confused.
See,
you know what I mean?
I am of the opposite of it. Like, I see this film and I feel like its messaging is very clear and concise on what it's trying to like tell me.
The messaging, yeah, I feel
like where it's trying to say and what it's trying to do is, I don't think there's any like misinterpretation of this film, honestly, because like it's a satire in like quotation marks. It like leans into the satire for a little bit, but it's not really. It is more of a to me it feels like another religious film that you would see about like, yes, God is good. The non-believer now is a believer because they went through these trials and tribulations, and you know who was there for them? God was. And that's how this film felt like to me. It felt like when I left the theater, it felt like, man, I just sat through another sermon, is what it felt like when I intentionally came in here to get a laugh and do some more thinking. But I didn't leave thinking. I left wanting more of the film to do more thinking, to do more challenging of my thoughts and of other thoughts of like my thoughts on Christianity. Maybe I have a different perspective of it, but like I left it with the same perspective I came in with it. And that's what was really disappointing to me. It was not challenging me in like my interpretation of the world and of Christianity itself, because I've been well versed in it, been raised in it. Yeah. So it didn't tell me anything new, didn't challenge any new ideas, because Clarence, he meets his mom. He meets his Jesus' mom and dad, and you know they say the same old things like, you really believe that angel came down? Like the jokes and like the little jabs here and there, and like, oh man, he ain't really do all that. And those parts weren't the strongest parts of the film to me personally. I felt like the strongest parts of the film were when Clarence was up there preaching about like knowledge and like holding on to that idea, and then when they would lean into the satire of when there's a certain character that shows up that you just see is that man's Jesus, but is he Jesus? I'm not gonna tell you who, where, but you'll see it if you do see this film.
And that's what I was like thinking. That's what, like when we were talking about it, I was like, I think what is strongest in your opinion is because like maybe that is what you relate to the most. You know what I mean? Like I see a lot of you in Clarence. You know what I mean? Like not like, oh, I know it all, or you know, I don't even think Clarence thought he knew it all. I think Clarence thought, and this is just my opinion, like Clarence thought that he knew enough to try and make life what he wanted it to be. But he realized it, like he's human. Like he knew that from the start. That's why he had this internalized like thing that he was carrying around, like, and not saying like you're carrying this, you know. And I don't want to, speak for you or anything. No. But it's just like he had this thing of like, I wish I controlled things, but I know that my control is determining the lot. It'll determine way more than just if I get this girl or not, or if I get money or not. Like there's a whole lot more control than I can afford to have. And like the way that he approached these situations, the way that he tried to approach life and make sense of what's going on was through logic, was through like knowledge. And I think that once that kind of went out the window, it got him in a very uncomfortable spot. And that's why I was like, I can see like that. And, we saw this with, some other folk, and that's why I was thinking about Ben too. Like, cause I'm like, y'all are kind of like the same on that. Like y'all very informative, very knowledgeable, very, I'm not trying to paint you in a box, nothing like that. But like, just a very analytical person.
Yeah, no, like, that's pretty much who I am. I'm not emotional driven. I am like facts and like what's actually happening, what's going on. Yeah. But like that idea of that, like you can't control every aspect of your life, in the film is weird because that's not what the film does. Like the film, you have to give your protagonist agency in what they're doing, or else nobody's going to watch the film if the protagonist just meanders around because the story or some MacGuffin tells him to, or like directs him to. So he has agency in his life, and when he takes action and does things, it's very interesting. And then I don't know, because at the end of the day, like, to me, it's like the film, it's like it has these moments where it's like, yes, this is interesting, we're getting somewhere, and then it gets to a point where it just abandons all of that and then just goes into another sermon about, like, yes, at the end of the day, put your faith in God and all will be well. And that's disappointing to me, personally, because of what I wanted out of this film. Yeah. And again, maybe this film wasn't for me, like I was telling you, Ben, and everybody else. It's like, maybe that's the idea of this film, is to, like, bring people in like me, expecting to, like, oh, we're going to see some challenge, some back and forth. And instead, actually, we're going to do a little bit of that, keep you in, and, like, actually, the little turnabout plot twist, we're not going to try to challenge you or, like, interact with this conversation at all. We're just going to say our thing and then do our thing. And then at the end of the day, this is it. Like, they're just telling the same story again. It's like, okay, that's nice, but that's, again, not what I really wanted. Cinematography was great. Music for sure was amazing. Fantastic soundtrack. Soundtrack's out there somewhere. It's got a lot of actual notable artists. I don't know off the top of my head. I just know the soundtrack, listening to it. Like, oh, this is good. Cinematography, very great, very creative shots. Yeah. What they used to, like, fade in and out was very interesting, because it was like a fade to black to a little circle, but it wouldn't always fade completely. It would focus on Clarence and, like, one of those portrait shots, and then it would wipe back to the thing, and the scene changes and everything. Very creative, very inventive. Love that of the film. But its messaging, its substance, I just couldn't vibe with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I get that. It's very valid. It's very valid. And anybody that, you know, has that similar sentiment, I think, yeah, and maybe it's just like my little weird take on it, but it's just like, because that it's such a, this is a, obviously it's, sorry y'all, it's obviously like a nuanced movie, and I think that if people are like, oh, this is just, anybody can come in and watch it, like, nah, you have to really be in the know of what you're, like, getting into. I think if you just blindly go into this, you might have, like, that moment where you're like, what is this? Like, what is this trying to do? But if you honestly are, like, really having some dialogue about Christianity, which is kind of funny, because I was like, I thought that this could have even been generalized to just like a religious movie instead of, like, you know what I mean, like a Christianity piece in ways, but I know that that's obviously the main vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Christianity.
The film, it doesn't, I don't know, the setting of Christianity doesn't make a lot of sense in this film, personally, like you're saying, because a lot of the things they do is very surface level, like, easy, like, Christianity, like, kickback when somebody says, like, so you believe in this? Like, that's not true. These are, like, all these things can be logically explained. Like, things arguments you've already heard before are in this film. So, like, I don't understand the reason that they give the location and, like, the time period of Christianity, because like I said earlier, like, when we were standing outside, like, describing how the film started off as guy down on his luck, does a get rich quick scheme to get the girl that he thinks is beyond his means. And while I was describing that, they were like, are you describing Aladdin? Am I? Because it sounded like I just described the plot of Aladdin. And I don't know, like, the setting of it in the beginning is like, man, it felt like we were in the hood, but in Jerusalem. Like, we had somebody selling dope, you know, and then doing little things. He was a rapscallion, and he wasn't living up to his full potential.
That's kind of like why I was like, anybody could be Clarence.
Yeah.
That's kind of like where I just...
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, like, in that setting of, like, Jerusalem, like, has no meaning, man. Because, like, I feel like you could have told the same exact story in modern day of just like, hey, man, what if Jesus was walking around now? Because if you're gonna talk about him pushing weed in Jerusalem, all right, man, that's a little funny. It's hilarious, ha ha. But like, why? If you're just gonna like abandon that in the rest of the film, like that just becomes like a, oh yeah, he was doing that, and like that little like world that they were living in was funny, but they don't live in it for long until they go into just the retelling of like the crucifixion of Christ, aka Clarence, at this point.
Yeah, I kind of was like, the reason I thought they moved away from it was because I think he like honestly began to move away from it himself. I think like naturally he was just kind of like, okay, I ain't gotta sell weed no more. Why? Because I got this elaborate ruse that I am a Messiah, and now that is his greatest, that's his greatest like benefactor now instead of that. So he can come away from that. He can actually have great profit now, and I ain't got to do that. And it's just like exchanging like things with other things, and then just kind of as things spiraled off, and he was like, wait, what am I actually doing? Then he tried to drop it completely, and then I was like, okay, I get it. Like in a way, it's like he's evolving, and that's why it's showing. Like, I don't know, and let me not say like it's what it's trying to do. This is how I interpreted it, obviously.
Yeah,
but it just felt like it should show somebody going through the motions of like, maybe I wasn't kind of doing the hottest thing. And maybe it's like, if you, like I said, if you squint and look at it, there's like a million different takeaways probably. But for me, it's just like, it just shows the growth and evolution of somebody, like every I don't want to say every man, every person. And it's just like, yeah, you can like grow, you can learn, you can evolve. And it could be something as simple as what I used to do. Or it could be like, hey, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't quite agree with the growth part, unfortunately, because like,
okay,
I don't think Clarence grew at all. Really, like, did he grow spiritually? Yes, but like his character did do a 180, but that change didn't feel like it was deserved to me personally. Like, he talks with his brother, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, let me go free these slaves real quick." And that's like the one good deed he's done, And like, cool, and it's like a nice callback because he was like, "Hey, free those and you can become an apostle." And then he's like, "Yeah, don't put my name in the books or whatever." And then like all of a sudden he just doesn't want to be a nobody. Like, he doesn't want to be like known in the history books. I didn't think he deserved that. Like, I didn't think the film did enough to earn Clarence that like growth and like redemption.
I thought he did, because I think, if we're going back to the beginning of the movie, his preoccupation was like, dog, I'm just trying to like be remembered. Like, it starts out with his brother saying like, you're a nobody. He's like, he's internalized that, you know what I mean? Like, he's wearing that, like, I am a nobody. Like, right. Even when he's like doing his due and getting like whatever, like, substantial, he's like, I'm still a nobody though. And like, he feels that. And then in that moment, I think he's just kind of like starting to see that in order for me to become somebody to myself, I have to drop the interpretation that being somebody in the eyes of others matters. And then as he slowly undoes that, it comes undone. It's like, it just coincides with like, man, let me just do something good that I know is good. And it's like, slowly it becomes less of, I want to be a part of this. I want to like make this like a stance of like, oh, I've done something. Now it's like, let me just do something good. And then that something good just turns into like,
yeah, you want to do something good, not because you want to fit in a part of the natural world. You want to do something good because, one, you want to do it because you want to be good, and you want to do it spiritually because you're led to do that.
Yeah,
right.
And I think he was kind of starting to get led through that interaction with his brother, and he didn't like quite know it yet. But obviously, let me say again, my interpretation.
No, that's fair and that's valid, and like, that's my problem with the film is that it does that because it sets that up in the back end of it, but it doesn't. To me, it doesn't feel it feels shoehorned in that he like like what you're saying is what has been preached in a plethora of churches. We are not here to fit in with the natural world. We are godly children. We are children of God, and we want to do those things.
See where you're coming from.
You see what I mean? And then like he does exactly what we have been hearing, and I'm like, oh, that is, to me, that's unfortunate. That's boring because I've seen this, I've heard this story before, and like I said, I was hoping to hear something different.
For me, I heard it almost in the inverse. Like, I took it as a sense of like, I looked at me, I was like, okay, Clarence could just be anybody that doesn't fit in the church. Like, let's take the apostles and stuff, right? Was not on board with having him in there. Like, laughed at this man.
Yeah.
And then eventually, by him not fitting in with them, by almost going just saying, forget y'all, and let me just like be led by this moral compass that I can't pinpoint, he became like one of their like heroes. And he's just like at the end, Clarence isn't, and that's kind of like what I feel like, you know, a walk in faith is just like, you're not looking and saying like, oh, I am good enough now. Like, I'm good now. Like, you're not doing like the I'm good enough for God stuff, because, you know, as it goes, like, you know, we all fall short. But I just think like for him, it was a moment of, man, like I can be like the representation of what God could be. Not let's just not say Christ, even though I know Christ is, you know, central to the story. Yeah. But just like I could be like what God would do. God would just be like this good person at heart. Even though the ways may look crazy, it's just like it's good at heart. And that's what I got from Clarence. It's just like, no, like at the end, he still wouldn't fit in any church. Like he's still the same person, but he's got better tendencies. He's got better habits. He's got maybe better thoughts towards life.
See, I don't.
Maybe not in application. Maybe he might still do the, you know, like he might still sell drugs when he got off the thing. But it's just like he's got a new perspective on life. And he's just like, okay, it's not about me. It's not all about me. It's not about me trying to be like, I matter to you. It's just like, what matters to me.
Yeah. And I don't think he changed, personally.
Fair.
Like, I don't think, like, he changed, like, his character changed from, like, doing that, and then all of a sudden he became, like, no, don't do that. And, like, he started moving how you would think Jesus would move. You know, he like, don't, and then stop. Like, that weird scene where the Romans... Also, this movie's doing a lot of random things. I'm just throwing this in here. When the Romans were pretty much standing in for police. Like, the Roman soldiers were standing in for the police, and they were like, get that black man. And then like, no. And it's like, all right, guys. And then like the guy that was going to clear Clarence, that wanted Clarence his head, it was going to crucify him himself because he was going to pay his money. Yeah. All of a sudden, had that weird monologue of being like, y'all take. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. We're doing too many things. We're juggling too many like ideas and like commentary in this film.
Yeah, that was, that part was kind of like. Yeah.
They shoehorned, like, if that was shoehorned in, and I was like, why is this here? Why is this entire scene here? Like, it means nothing into the grand scheme of things. Like, all of a sudden we're talking about the thoughts of race in this film. Yeah. I'm like, whatever, dog. And I don't know. Yeah. It's weird. But that's like, I could talk about this all day, but we won't. Because if it did, we'd be here forever. Yeah, but like, those are like my thoughts on the film, your thoughts. And like, clearly we see two different films. It looked like we went in and saw two different films.
Yeah.
So what would you rate your version of the Book of Clarence?
Honestly, I'd rate it like 7.5
So would you recommend people seeing it?
Out of 10. I would recommend it. I would recommend it. I say go in there with your heart. Just don't sit down with and obviously you're gonna see the trailers anyway, but like just go in there and just be like, all right, let me just let the movie watch you at times. See what you find. But I would recommend people to experience it. Not, oh, this is a great movie. Just experience it. And if you come back to it, it's for a reason. Definitely.
Okay, because me personally, this would be another one of the weird ones where it's like, I would not recommend this for the average moviegoer.
Right.
But I would recommend this for somebody that, like my mom, honestly. It is one of those films that I think you could realistically, you can't throw this movie in church because they say some words that are, not church friendly. But like if you're an old like young adult to like adult churchgoer, you could go see this movie and expecting to like go on Facebook and write a scathing review, but actually come out of it and be like, oh, this is nice. And for that, I would recommend it for those people because I feel like the film was made for them. But if you're anywhere in my camp where spirituality is not like the highest thing on your hierarchy of needs to me, I don't think you would enjoy this movie if you're looking for something more to like challenge the way you look and think about the world. I don't think you enjoy this movie because this movie does not give you that to me. So it is I recommend it for some people, but not all. That is how I see it.
That is bad. I was gonna say, but you know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
You've been listening to In Post. If you like what you heard, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps the podcast grow. Thank you. You've been listening to In Post.